right, left, 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 right, left, 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 right, left, 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 right, left, 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 right, left, left, left. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Michigan War Dog Memorial. At this time, we're going to recite the most important words you're going to say today for sure. It's the Pledge of Allegiance to our country. You said, colors. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Raise hope. Hope.
That was the AMVETS color guard. Thank you, guys. Today is a day that we are going to honor our canine heroes. The actual official day is March 13th. But here in Michigan on March 13th, it may be 5 degrees below zero and 2 foot of snow. So we thought we'll move it off to the end of April so it's warmer. Welcome to Michigan. Again, we're going to honor our canine heroes today. The military dog that saved thousands of lives on the battlefield. The law enforcement dog protects their partner in our community. The search and rescue dog finds our lost children, seniors who've lost their way. Our service dog to give our handicapped more independence. Our therapy dog that comforts the ill and the elderly. And our companion dog to give a soldier with PTSD a sense of security. That's why we're here today, and I appreciate all of you coming. So I'd like to get started. I'd like to bring up Mindy Albright to give the invocation.
Uncover!
Good morning. I will pray no one gets frostbite. Thank you. We come together today to commemorate the service and sacrifices of our canine heroes, the thousands of dogs who have served alongside our troops and our law enforcement officers, our search and rescue, and yes, those of the service dogs and the SAR dogs. Let's pray. Father, we bow before you with humble and grateful hearts for the amazing companions you have gifted us with, these canine warriors who have saved thousands of American lives and limbs in a world of evil and danger. Thank you for these dogs that are on the front lines of our wars, no matter where that may be. The bond you have enabled between military dogs and their handlers is one that only war can forge. and it is an appropriate gift that you have given. It is appropriate in the protective element that you have given. They depend on each other for survival, while the trailing troops' safety are in their hands, their noses, and their paws. We ask for divine protection for those four-legged military members and law enforcement members, along with their handlers who serve today in memory of those who have served and sacrificed. We are eternally grateful to you, God, for providing these canine warrior companions to our troops with their unconditional love and devotion that is in the likeness of who you are as our Father. If they could speak to us, I think that this is what we might hear. My eyes are your eyes to watch and protect yours. My ears are your ears to hear and detect the evil minds in the dark. My nose is your nose to scent out the invaders of your domain when the world we work in seems so insane. And so you may live, my life is also yours. Lord, we are eternally grateful to you, O God, for providing these canine warrior companions to all of our warriors, and we honor them and their service today. Amen.
Amen.
Now I've got a treat for you. I've got to tell you a little story before I call him up here. But this all took place last year, and I get a phone call. This gentleman said, "Mr. Waitlaw, is it okay if I use some of the names on the headstones because I want to write a song about our canine heroes?" I said, "That would be great. I love it." And about a month later, he wrote that song and he sent me a CD. It was fantastic. Now we're going to share that with you today. So please help me welcome Kenny Lang.
Hey, Kenny.
This song is dedicated with love, honor, and gratitude to our four-legged heroes. It was a cold October morning when I first met Emily. Looked to be a little rough, there was something there I knew. Through months of intense training, growing stronger day by day. Seemed to know my every thought and would always lead the way. More than a German shepherd, she was my closest friend. True and faithful partner who would be there to the end. Always right beside me, standing strong and tall. The grace of God goes with her, four-legged hero, giving all. Deployed into a battle zone, hell on earth to me, and he knew the dangers that I could never see. Just like Cody, Tina, Buddy, and Quinn, to name a very few, served her tour of duty until her time on earth was through. More than a German shepherd, she was my closest friend, a true and faithful partner who would be there to the end. Always right beside me, standing strong and tall. Grace of God goes with her, four-legged hero, giving all. Well now, Timmy has gone home now. It was a cold October morning. Somewhere in this land of ours, another hero's born. Well, I think about her always when I cross that rainbow bridge. She'll be waiting right there for me and come running down the ridge. Well, I'll cry, and then I'll smile big. I think of the past she tried. And you know, there's no coincidence in my mind. The dog spelled backwards is God. More than a German shepherd, she was my closest friend. True and faithful partner who would be there to the end. Always right beside me, standing strong and tall. Grace of God goes with her, four-legged hero, giving all. Yeah, the grace of God goes with her, four-legged hero, giving all.
Yeah, that's Kenny Lang. We've got these CDAs down at at our tent if anybody's interested in it. So, all right, this next person that's going to come up to the stage has been supporting us ever since we started this venture. About 7 years ago, we found this abandoned pet cemetery, started cleaning it up and make something out of it, which has turned out to be very well, which we really appreciate all the volunteers that came to help us. But Senator Mike Kowal stood behind us all the way. He came to all our events, and today he's here to give us a proclamation, making it official of Canine Veteran Day. So Mike, would you please join us?
Thank you very much, Phil. It's always a pleasure to be here among so many friends. I have this proclamation from the state of Michigan that was put together by the governor of our great state. So whereas military working dogs have been used by the U.S. Armed Forces since World War I, and on March 13, 1942, Quartermaster Corps of the U.S. Army began training dogs for a newly established war dog program known as the Canine Corps. Whereas today military working dogs serve alongside men and women in uniform, both on active duty and serving in reserves, the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and Coast Guard. Whereas it's only fitting that we remember and honor the dog handlers, their faithful canine partners for their services and sacrifices during World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, and many other conflicts around the world. Whereas on this day we encourage all Michiganders to honor the forgotten hero dogs who help sustain the protection, safety, and freedom of citizens in Michigan and throughout the United States. Now, therefore, I, Governor Rick Snyder, Governor of the great state of Michigan, do hereby proclaim March 13th, 2018 as Canine Veterans Day, and it's signed by Governor Rick Snyder.
very pleased to announce that we have one of our keynote speakers are going to be coming up here in a minute. He was a founder of the United States Military Working Dog Team National Monument, located down in Lackland Air Force Base. An international award-winning author of Canine Warriors and Dog Tags of Courage. He was featured in a widely praised television documentary, War Dogs, Americans' Forgotten Heroes. His War Dog stories has also appeared on the National Channel, the Animal Planet, and the Discovery Channel. His military service awards include the Merit of Merit, Legion of Merit, Bronze Star, Purple Heart, Vietnam Cross of Gallantry, Combat Infantry Badge. He was recently recognized by the U.S. Congressman Walter Jones in a speech entered in congressional records of the U.S. House of Representatives for his accomplishments in the military working dogs. Please help me welcome John C. Burnham.
Well, I just flew in from Florida, so I'm kind of freezing my rear end off here. But you'll have to forgive me if I chatter my teeth through this presentation. I always wondered, what is a veteran? The term veteran is commonly used to describe one who has served in the military and discharged under honorable conditions. A veteran is also classified as one with extensive experience in a particular field of service. Some call these veterans the experts and the old masters. So I ask myself, do military and police working dogs fit the definition of a veteran? I say absolutely. And I'm very happy that Phil and Barbara Whitloff and the Michigan War Dog Memorial Board of Directors have dedicated today, April 28th, 2018, as Canine Veterans Day. And I'm also grateful to have been invited to talk about an expert and courageous German Shepherd Scout dog named Clipper, and what he meant to me during the Vietnam War. I served 2 combat tours in the U.S. Army Infantry from 1966 to 1968. My first tour was without a dog. I was a rifleman, a grunt, and a bush beater, as they called us. I had experienced the horrors of combat before being wounded myself. After recovering in a U.S. Army hospital in Japan, I returned to South Vietnam and volunteered to join the 44th Scout Dog Platoon. The 44th had trained at Fort Benning, Georgia, and arrived in South Vietnam in January of 1967. I arrived there 3 months later in March. The 44th had about 17 well-trained dog handlers and about 20 German Shepherd Scout dogs. They had already suffered a few casualties before I had arrived. Outside our highly fortified infantry brigade base camp was a very hostile combat environment. It was crawling with enemy hit-and-run squads, saboteurs, snipers, and mobile mortar teams. It was up to the scout dogs to sniff out the enemy located in there and locate their hidden base camps and find their entry routes into South Vietnam from Cambodia so the infantry could engage and eradicate their existence. Many of my fellow infantrymen that I was nuts to volunteer to be a point man walking a dog. Well, maybe I was a little different in the head, but I sure wasn't crazy. However, I did know that my new assignment, relying on a dog, was far beyond anything I could have possibly imagined. My scout dog Clipper was a handsome 70 pounds of toned muscle. He had a friendly disposition, a healthy black and brown coat, big brown eyes, and a great set of ears. Clipper moved with a sense of pride and intelligence, and he was already well trained. I was trained by expert dog handlers. The training was repetitious, required constant command and control and discipline, and a concentrated effort on my part to keep my eyes on Clipper's body language. I worked Clipper through the obstacle course to maintain his muscle, tone, and his agility. I worked him through the basic and advanced training scenarios of searching and alerting on different types of noises, captured enemy equipment, mock booby traps, and human decoys. Clipper easily adapted to my verbal commands and my silent hand signals. And he was calm under live fire exercises. The more I trained, the more I learned about what Clipper could see, hear, and smell, and how he reacted. I coupled the dog training with my previous combat experience and was immediately deployed to lead combat patrols. When we worked together, Clipper was really the one in charge because he was the point man, and he was the early silent warning of danger. I walked behind Clipper, connected to a leather leash. I was Clipper's master, his interpreter, and his pack mule. Clipper and I spent the next year together and completed about 40 combat missions. A mission lasted anywhere from 1 to 7 days. Many missions turned up nothing significant, while others resulted in extremely violent engagements with the enemy. Over time, a regular infantryman acclimates to the sounds and smells common in a tropical jungle combat environment. His instincts and reactions to danger become almost instantaneous. But even the most highly skilled combat infantryman was no match for the incredible natural animal instincts of a dog's nose, ears, and his trained mind when searching the jungle and open terrain for the enemy. Clipper navigated our way through the jungle, across rivers and creeks, up and down hills, through bamboo thickets and rice paddies, and we slogged through the torrential monsoon rains. We dealt with the heat, the bites and stings of tropical bugs, blood-sucking leeches, fire ants, bees, scorpions, spiders, ticks, and we avoided a variety of different poisonous snakes. While Clipper walked point, leading the direction of travel, he had to prove his ability to alert on danger before the patrol walked into an enemy trap or a kill zone. One thing I learned was that blind faith in a dog was not in the vocabulary of a well-trained combat infantryman. However, when Clipper did alert well before our patrol walked into an enemy ambush, or sniffed out that hidden underground tunnel complex, or located that camouflage base camp deep in the jungle, or sniffed out that well-hidden underground stashes of munitions, food, and medical supplies, well, then and only then did Clipper really earn the confidence and respect of those skeptical infantrymen. He was hailed a hero, and the infantrymen reached down to pet Clipper and shake his paw. And of course, Clipper loved every little happy moment of that. On one particular mission, our patrol was sweeping through rows of rubber trees in the Michelin rubber tree plantation when an infantryman tripped a booby-trap wire and was seriously wounded. After that, I had the patrol form a column to follow behind Clipper, hoping Clipper would alert on any more booby traps in our path. Clipper took the lead, and he slowly zigzagged his way forward. My eyes were glued to Clipper's every body movement. The result was that Clipper alerted on several more knee-high tripwires stretched between several rows of rubber trees. On that day, Clipper had saved me and the rest of the patrol from further injury or possible death. Then one night, while we were all sleeping peacefully in our base camp, and the dogs were resting quietly in their kennel runs, we were attacked by a barrage of mortars and rockets. Our sleeping quarters were riddled with shrapnel, and the kennel took 2 direct hits. When the barrage ended, we rushed into the kennel of scattered debris and pools of blood to attend to the whimpering and bleeding dogs trapped inside their runs. The sight was shocking beyond imagination. Dog handlers wept while cradling their wounded and dying dogs in their arms. Clipper was emotionally shaken with bloody paws when he tried and failed to tear through the wire mesh door and escape his confinement. In all, several dogs were seriously wounded and 2 died. 2 dog handlers were also seriously wounded that night. The enemy had attacked us where we were most vulnerable, and they knew it. Over time, Clipper's paws had healed. I remember how he would sniff that dried, blood-stained concrete floor in the empty run of his friend Shadow, who died during that mortar attack. It was Clipper's way of not forgetting his friend. On another mission, Clipper was cautiously moving across a clearing of waist-high brush. Then he stopped, rigid in his tracks, his head and ears in full alert position. As soon as I got down on one knee and signaled everyone behind us to halt, a sniper opened fire, and then all hell broke loose. Enemy rifle and machine gun fire escalated into a brutal firefight. The enemy had been waiting for us to get closer into that maximum killing zone, but Clipper's alert stopped us short of that disastrous area. However, Clipper and I were trapped out front. We lay briefly and quietly in the brush, not daring to move for risk of being shot by either side. American casualties were light that day. Clipper and I survived without a scratch. The enemy was defeated, and the remainder chased across the Cambodian border where we could not pursue. On another mission, our patrol had set up a nighttime ambush in a remote area of jungle along a well-used narrow footpath. When the morning light cleared, the darkness of the trees and the shadows disappeared. It was very silent. Then Clipper alerted. I looked, I saw nothing, I heard nothing. We waited. A moment later, a well-armed enemy soldier appeared riding a bicycle. When he got close, I said, "Get him!" And Clipper lunged from the brush and knocked the soldier to the ground. The soldier was so stunned and shaking with fear that he literally wet his pants. The enemy soldier just happened to be a courier carrying lots of money and assorted documents. Then there were times when Clipper and I shared emotional pain of losing fellow scout dog handlers wounded and killed in action. Other times, we stood at gravesite and grieved the loss of scout dogs killed in action and buried in our base camp cemetery. When resting in base camp, we sat together under Clipper's tree. I would read him letters from home and stories in the Stars and Stripes newspapers. I would tell him about what it was like growing up in Denver, Colorado, and how much he would really like taking hikes with me along the Colorado mountain trails and drinking fresh, cold water from the mountain streams. Of course, Clipper would just lay there listening to me silently with his head in my lap. I remember one time in the jungle when it was raining all night. I had covered myself with a poncho and sort of drifted into a sleep. Then I suddenly woke up dripping and wet and shivering. Clipper had pulled the poncho over him. I just shook my head and just smiled at him. What is a dog handler going to do? Over that year together, we had become inseparable friends and partners. But it all came to an end the day I had to say goodbye to Clipper. My combat tour was over. I was going home. Clipper was not going with me. Why? Why? Because our government had classified Clipper and the rest of his dog buddies as expendable equipment. They were all doomed to serve in Vietnam until they died or the war ended. Clipper was a real American hero, but he would never get to live out the rest of his life away from the dangerous sounds and smells of a war zone. He would never get to watch and march in a parade with me, a Veterans Day parade, 4th of July. I wasn't sure how many more missions Clipper would survive walking point with another handler. I feared that Clipper's death would be violent because of his job, walking point, and the fact that the enemy had a bounty on all the scout dogs. I didn't know how to say goodbye to my best friend. So I stood up, looked at Clipper into his big brown eyes, and gave him one last bear hug. And I told him that I would never, ever forget him. Clipper stood there on all fours with his ears up, pointed high, like the champion he was. I turned and slowly walked away, never looking back. But I felt Clipper watching me as I vanished down the road. To this day, I don't know what happened to Clipper or how he died. What was more important to me was that I would always remember him. And I told him that. And I can always come back here to this memorial cemetery and touch Clipper's name on that black granite memorial wall with the other 4,234 war dogs that served during the Vietnam War and did not come home. Since World War II, U.S. war dogs have been buried in marked and unmarked graves in cemeteries across Europe, the Pacific Islands, Korea, the Middle East, and right here in this cemetery. Although their lives were cut short by war, their images and stories live on in the minds and the hearts of those that knew them well. Their memories also live on in thousands of priceless photographs, published books, newspapers and magazine articles, TV documentaries, and a few Hollywood films. And today, we honor military and police canine veterans that are retired from active duty and living a life in peace. We also honor those canines still on the job, working across America, and those deployed to save lives in dangerous regions around the world. So I will close with this quote by Will Rogers. If there are no dogs in heaven, then when I die, I want to go where they went. Thank you.
Wow. What a story. All right, I'd like to have our next speaker. He was a Vietnam Scout Dog handler as well with the United States Marine Corps. He's also the president of the U.S. War Dog Association located in New Jersey. Would you please help me welcome Ron Elio.
Good afternoon. It's an honor to be here today at the Michigan War Dog Memorial and Cemetery to celebrate Canine's Veterans Day. I don't think there's a more appropriate place than being right here today. Working dogs have been used by the military throughout history. In modern times, starting in 1942 with World War II, the U.S. military began an advanced program of training dogs to assist troops in war. During that time, 10,000 dogs were trained and deployed. As a Marine Scout Dog handler in Vietnam, I served in combat with my dog Stormy. There's no way to count how many times Stormy saved my life and the lives of others in our unit. This happened in all areas of Vietnam, and it is estimated that the dog saved more than 10,000 lives during the conflict. Since that time, war has become more complicated with the technology that the enemies can use against our troops. The military working dogs play a vital role in spoiling those efforts. As General Petraeus stated during the Iraq War, the capability of the military working dogs bring to the fight cannot be replicated by man or machine. By all measures of performance, their yield outperforms any asset we have in our inventory. Today, there are approximately 3,000 dogs working and deployed around the world in combat, as well as protecting people and strategic assets and bases at home, abroad. In these times of terrorism and other threats, working dogs aid not only the military, but also a host of local and national law enforcement agencies. Patrol narcotic teams assist communities with school searches upon request. Narcotic teams detect illicit drugs on the highways and in businesses, airports, and residents assisting drug units. U.S. Customs, DEA, ICE, FBI, and other agencies. They also assist correction departments with search of facilities, patrol teams, search for wanted and lost individuals. They are also vital in the apprehension of burglary and robbery suspects and other individuals who fled from the law enforcement. The dedication of these canines and their handlers save lives and prevent terrorism and events daily around the world and in our communities at home. A day set aside for Canine Veterans Day to honor these noble canines and their handlers is a tribute to our way of life and those on 2 legs and 4 paws who work tirelessly to keep us safe. Thank you.
Works better if you push the button, right? All right, the next speaker was in law enforcement for 28 years, and in 25 of those years, he was a canine handler who walked the streets with his dog. He's also the founder of Canine Academy and president of the National Association of Professional Canine Handlers. Please help me welcome Terry Foley.
Phil said, "Why did I come from so far back there?" I said I needed to walk to warm up. Welcome, and thank you. I am very much honored to be standing in front of you to talk about law enforcement and the dedication of their canines. But the first thing that I want to say is thank you to all of you for the service that you have done to make this possible that I could stand in front of you to speak today. In law enforcement, they started using canines back in the 1950s, and since then, there's an approximation of well over 30,000 dogs being used throughout our country for law enforcement and working purposes. In 2017, 188 of those service dogs lost their lives in the line of duty. In our organization, the National Association of Professional Canine Handlers, we have well over 1,300 members throughout the United States, Canada, and the Netherlands. Recently, in May, in San Diego, an officer deployed his dog in the attic in looking for a wanted felon. Just like all of the officers who have their dogs and the dedication that they always want to be first. I'm the one that's going to go get that person to keep ourselves safe. Well, in this particular incident, this person killed this canine. The felon was shot and was retrieved out of the attic. In March of 2014, Napatch member U.S. Forestry Officer Jason Crisp and his canine Maros were out tracking a homicide suspect in a person that had killed his mother, his father, and another relative. Upon coming to a barn where the dog had indicated that the person was at, a gunfight ensued. Jason Crisp and his canine Maros were killed at that scene. The suspect, again, was later killed by officers after a brief chase. Another Napatch member in November of 2016, Wayne State Officer Colin Rose, was in the city of Detroit doing his job investigating a suspicious person with his canine partner looking upon him. The suspect pulled a gun and killed Officer Colin Rose. That person has since been located also. Over 9,000 canine uses for the year of 2017 have been done out of my facility, where I have 87 law enforcement and working teams working. I think that says it in itself on what these officers and their canine partners are utilized for and needed on a daily basis. They want to be first. On a good note, I'd like to recognize one of our Napich members, Flint Officer Bosmer, and his canine Ito, who just received Officer of the Year for tracking and locating an autistic child that had been missing for hours and was in the woods in the middle of this past winter. I'd also like to recognize St. Clair Shores Officer Chomos and his canine Wiley, who located a non-communicative who was missing for 14 and a half hours in the middle of winter. Without these officers and their canine partners, they would not have saved the lives or given hope to these families who could not find these people. Last, I'd like to recognize a couple other officers that are here, master trainers, and they're on my executive board. From Oakland County Sheriff's Department, Bob Loken, and Oakland County Sheriff's Department, Mike Richardson. The dedication that these two have made towards canine and the training of what goes on and the dogs that perform and the training that they have provided is second to none. Right here. Last, I'm going to keep this short, it's cold. All of us in law enforcement would not be here today if it had not been for the veterans that paved the way on the use of canines, making our government aware that these dogs are not just pieces of equipment, that these dogs, for some reason, God has said, we're only going to be here a very short time, very few years. But there must be a reason for that. Part of the reason, I think, is so they can make us better human beings. And that we can understand that they were put here for a reason to serve us, not for any selfish reasons, but just because we asked them to. Thank you.
Now, we would like to have the veterans of foreign wars please present the wreath. Bugler. Sound off. Now we have, by the way, we have a new Canine Salute team. And I'd like to ask the Canine Salute team to be a salute to their fallen comrades. Last year, we had some vandalism out here. And we have a gravestone over there of a canine hero, search and rescue dog. For whatever reason, somebody took his special made flag that he had next to his headstone. Why they took it, I have no idea. So I happened to post it out there on the Michigan War Dog Memorial Facebook page, and some young ladies responded to me, and she said, my boyfriend, he works at a metal laser company, and I'm going to talk to him. Can you send me a picture of that flag? So I did. And I didn't hear anything for quite a while. So all of a sudden, one Sunday morning, or actually Saturday morning, I'm sitting at the house drinking my coffee, and the doorbell rings. And this young fellow standing out there, he said, my girlfriend had got a hold of me and said that Griffin had his flag stolen. Well, I made you 2 new ones. Totally unsolicited, and came to the house and gave us a new flag. Now we've installed it back on the grave, and this time we put it in cement. So I'd like to ask Zach Thornton and his friend, please come to the stage. It's always such a pleasure. I've worked with a lot of volunteers, but when people just come forward without being solicited to do the right thing, it just warms my heart. So Ron, would you want to come up and present this?
This award, Zach Thornton, in recognition of outstanding service to humanity performed with dedication, loyalty, and selflessness in service to the Michigan War Dog Memorial, military working dogs, and their handlers. And we'd like to present you with the U.S. War Dog Memorial.
Well, that ends the program. I want to now thank you for coming.